Hello, welcome to Module 2 within our Informatics for Healthcare Teams and Scholarly Inquiry course. This module is focused on the use of tools for research management and research application. So our learning outcome for this module is to examine appropriate data and electronic applications that facilitate and support research in nursing. Now, when we met at orientation, I covered a little bit of this along with the librarians. So we know that nurses range in learning skills and comfort with online research, library, and evidence-based resources. So that's why we go over a lot of this, because I know I learn all the time from the libraries, and things change all the time. The databases change, the interface changes. There's lots of things. Lots of reasons that we don't always have the same knowledge or expertise related to technology. There's so many things out there. So I know that you all know there's tons and tons of articles available to us now. There's greater than 21,000 journals out there. This knowledge increases by about 4% every year. And so it just continues to grow. We are in an era of information overload, without a doubt. Now, we talked about this too. How often does nursing information double? It's every 5 years. And keep in mind that statistic was a number of years ago. So it's very likely that that's different now. And then we've probably all heard that it takes about 17 years to get research in the clinical setting. And again, that statistic was probably back from the late 90s, early 2000s. So hopefully that number has actually gone down. But I cannot find another statistic with updated information. And in fact, I was preparing something a couple weeks ago and saw where someone else cited this same statistic in their work, so I don't know that anybody's really done an analysis again on that. So many nurses that are in practice have never learned how to search an electronic database, and many are not able to differentiate between research reports and other types of literature. Many lack the ability to critically evaluate research reports and then even begin to link that back into their practice. And the reason I mention this too is because we all have varying degrees of skill with regard to this, but just think about this as you work to prepare the products, the deliverables, whatever it is in your research. How will it be packaged so that it can be used easily by those that you want to use it? So if you find, if you develop some sort of intervention, if you, develop some sort of theory, whatever the case might be, how are you going to put that together so that other people can use it as you intend them to? Now, this is an image from a landmark study that was done years ago, as you can see, 2005, and it identifies the primary individual barriers to nurses' use of research and practice. And again, I just think it's good for us to all be reminded of this, because as we work to develop, as we work to conduct research, develop some sort of outcome from that, how are nurses going to use it? How can we put it in a usable form for them? So, or patients even, whatever your target audience is. And then there are also institutional barriers. Again, these were identified in that landmark study in 2005. Institutional barriers related to nurses' use of research and practice. And again, I think it's just important that we're reminded of this, because if we're developing innovations, we're conducting research, how do we work to get that back into the clinical setting where the rubber meets the road. So we will speak a little bit in this module about searching for information, and I know a number of you attended the orientation and were able to spend some time listening to the librarians and considering how you might search for evidence, literature related to your topic. So most of the time we develop a PICO question to help guide us. And I know that you all are probably very familiar with this, but just as a reminder as to what this is, this actually, and you all will be doing research, generating new knowledge, but when we're looking for literature to help inform us as we prepare to do that research, it's often a really good habit to get into that of creating a question to help guide your search. So PICO is very commonly used. So what's the patient or the disorder, the specific group that you're looking at? What's the intervention? What's the comparison? And then what's the outcome? So just again, consider that. I do have some strategies outlined for you just as reminders for searching literature and databases. You might keep a record of your search details. This helps you when you go back to write up how you found the literature that you include in your work. Keep notes, and it's a little bit easier than it used to be with this, but I know all of us kind of work in different ways, and so you just want to come up with a system that will help you and help you keep you kind of organized and grounded. Also, there may be, just as a reminder again, there may be some overlap in the techniques and tools that we find in evidence-based practice and those that we use to support nursing research. The evidence pyramid, you will certainly consider this when you review the literature that you find. And I know you all have seen this before and you're familiar with each of these levels, but just as a reminder, this is the Melnick 2010 version. Of course, there's certainly, she publishes all the time related to this, and so this hasn't really changed necessarily. But you can look to Melnick and her colleagues for this pyramid. Now, I just wanted to say that, let me go back just one step here. There's a lot of emphasis on finding level 1, level 2 studies to support what we're doing. However, with the PhD work, dissertation work, and research, we're often generating new knowledge, and you will find yourself sometimes in an area where there isn't a lot of work. So we haven't done systematic review. There's nothing to systematically review. There aren't any randomized controlled trials. So this is significant for that reason. The other is, I personally would say, don't dismiss the evidence that exists in some of these other levels. So you might read a qualitative study that is very insightful, related to maybe what patients are experiencing or what caregivers are experiencing, which leads you to think about something else and to ask a question about another aspect of this particular issue. So just try to be open-minded as you begin to dive into all of this research in your area, that you might find pearls hidden in some of these things that, sometimes people tell you to look for, stronger evidence. So just keep that in mind. Consider reviewing various resources, and you all know that we're very fortunate. We have so many resources at the University of Alabama, in Huntsville. We have lots of online databases to help us for sure, and we have very, very helpful and kind librarians. So they never would want you to hesitate to contact them. So use multiple databases when you do your search, unless for some reason there is a purpose behind you focusing in on one database. And there will be times that happens, but probably in your situation, as you begin to really explore the literature in your area and begin to refine what it is that you want to do, you will need to really explore lots of databases. And to be honest, you may even need to go outside of healthcare related databases. Sometimes people have to go into education, like the ERIC databases. Academic Search Premiers is very helpful. It's very, very broad. And then, even business related databases, depending on what you're doing. Now, there are options for, where we can find the best evidence for different levels. So I just wanted to just bring this to your attention, where you might find that. There are some other tips I have for you, and we talked about this, I know, with the librarians, but consider, extending or reducing the years of publication. You may want to focus in on a particular era, depending on what you are doing. So just make sure you're maximizing the use of the databases and all the functionalities that they offer when you're doing your search. You might want to use several searchers. So, as a doctoral student, it's a little challenging because it's usually just you. But if you have the opportunity to work with other people to sort of validate your search findings, that's a very, very good thing to do. You might find a key article, a seminal piece of work that's been done in your area. Be sure to look at the reference list there, and if there's anything you can harvest, if you will, from that reference list, it's very helpful. That might lead you to some other things. Be sure you know the definitions that you're working with, that you're exploring. Use text words and index terms. Use proper names in your search. Sometimes we'll use a proper name or a brand name of a drug, but the generic might yield many more resources for you. The other is to consider a number of things here: alternate spellings, use of terms or of similar meaning, terminology differences across disciplines and nationalities, the differences that have existed in historical naming. So over time, terms change and maybe evolve. Short forms for terms like study names. So, a lot of drug trials have a particular, research trials have a study name. If you find that out, you might look for that as well. And then brand and generic names, especially when you're talking about drugs. And consider like what other countries, like Europe, I think they use paracetamol instead of acetaminophen. So just sort of open your, keep your mind open to those different things when you're doing these searches, so that you'll get as much as you possibly can from your search. You want to keep track of what you've done. Now this says include searches on all printouts. Well, that's up to you. We do a lot of things electronically now. I have to admit, I still need to print out my articles and write on them and highlight. So that's totally up to you. But this next one is very important to write down the databases you've searched and the terms that you use in those databases. And you'll see as you begin to read these, read articles, read papers, you'll see where the authors have described in their lit review, more than likely, the terms they used, the databases that they used. And that's very important because that's really part of the transparency. I know personally, I have a very hard time when I'm reviewing an article, I have a very hard time jumping past that, if the authors haven't really described how they found the literature that has informed them, or the evidence that's informed them as they've worked in that on that study. So it's very important that you keep track of that, and that you are able to articulate it in writing when you go to write something up. Now, I think there was a discussion about the Boolean operators, but just as a reminder, use those Boolean operators to help you in your search, and or not. You can narrow your search with them, expand your search, be more relevant, more specific and focused, and exclude certain things that are not relevant. So you typically don't want to use not, but because that does sort of make things more focused. But you may be in an area of a body of literature that you need to do that. So whatever works for you. But like, here's an example of diabetes and pregnancy. So using the terms diabetes and pregnancy, this is what the search would yield, the contents in that. If you use or, you see how that broadens and opens up all of the options that you would get in return. So headache and migraine. If you use not, so music, not jazz, so this sort of counts out all these things, that contents that may have been helpful to you here. So that's just a little reminder for you. And again, as a reminder, a lot of this is a reminder, I know. Dissemination of research is certainly expedited with all of the electronic tools that we have, and I'll get into some of those specific ones in just a second. We will have an activity related to the EndNote, the Bibliography Database Manager, and our work is certainly, I really don't know how we did it without it, because I remember stressing over, with an APA manual in front of me, stressing over how we would plug the references in. And so now it makes it so much easier. And then if there's an issue with your references, you can also go back and generate another list. So maybe there's you read the requirements incorrectly when you're submitting. Maybe you thought they wanted AMA, they wanted APA. You can just generate a new list. And then that also, when you cite within your text, using that EndNote or another bibliography database manager, then all of that information within text is also changed accordingly, which is very, very helpful. And then electronic publication makes it possible for us to share our results without going through some more archaic routes of getting information shared and even sent in, to be honest, to publishers. And now a lot of publishers are, because of the cost of publication and the cost associated with purchasing subscriptions to journals, a lot of libraries have stopped carrying certain titles, journal titles, because they don't have enough people that are using them, and they'll use interlibrary loan, other mechanisms. But nevertheless, because of those costs, a lot of publishers are going to a more online, electronic form of publication. And with that, we're also able to push out like ahead of print. We call it ahead of print. If something is really relevant, a hot topic, a lot of those can be published ahead of the issue in which they're going to be printed and sent out. So we're again, this contributes to the information overload, but then again, we're also very, it's very fortunate for us to be able to get our hands on and access a lot of that information quicker. So just as a reminder, again, useful databases, the NIH, National Library of Medicine, the National Quality Measures Clearinghouse, Virginia Henderson International Nursing Library, the Cochrane Library, and certainly there are more. These are just a handful for you. I did want to talk with you about some specific tools that assist with research. Some of these, you have access to them within the universities. So there's lots of ways you can collect your data. And when you get ready to do that, you'll certainly explore that with your dissertation chair and your committee. But one that comes quickly to mind is Qualtrics, because we have, there are lots of survey type, data collection techniques that we use, and Qualtrics is very easy to use. And as a student of University of Alabama or an employee of University of Alabama, you have free access to Qualtrics. So again, when it's time for you to do that, you can come to this page. There are instructions on how to get permission to use it if this is what you need. And UAH may also have the same, they may have the same type of access. Now, when you are using quantitative methods, you may need to, well, it's more than likely you will need to do statistics, perform statistical procedures on that. There are different options for that. Now, you will have a course dedicated to quantitative methods, and I'm sure that you'll go into more detail about that. In the meantime, again, I just wanted to point you to the SPSS page and how to get that software. SPSS is commonly used to do statistical analyses, statistical procedures. Another software is SAS used. And again, this is going to depend a lot on what your dissertation chair suggests, and a lot on what the the data that you have, what's really necessary. There are also more sophisticated packages that are out there. R is one of them. They have a whole lot of data that you need to process. That's an option as well. If you are using qualitative methods, there are software tools that can help you manage your data. That's very important to realize that these software packages are not intended to analyze your qualitative data. So those are going to be lots of text, lots of words. That is not the intent of these software tools. The intent is to help you manage the data, because a lot of data is typically produced with qualitative research, because you're asking questions, you're getting, in some cases very verbose responses, and then you have to go through there and read it as the researcher. So these tools help you code it, it helps you organize it, turn it into themes. Both of these, Atlas and Invivo, are probably the most popular. Atlas is a European software. I believe it was started in Germany. I actually used this before I used Invivo, but we have Invivo now at UA, and it's quite user friendly. But I just wanted to point out Atlas and what that's about. But this is an example here. You can see from just these images. You can load pictures, documents with the transcriptions. There's even maps, audio, video. There's lots of different things that you can load into both Atlas and Invivo, and then it's analyzed. You go in and you work with it and analyze it accordingly. So again, it helps keep you focused, and helps keeps everything together for you in one space. Invivo is pretty neat with all that it can do, and it can even help you analyze social media data now. So there are lots of options with it, and Let's see if I can click on here for you. Yeah, this is just going to tell you a little bit about it, but again, it looks similar to what you saw in that other page. Same idea, where there are documents through here. You code them, and depending on how your study is set up, you may have codes that are pre-established before you go in and review that data, or you may be coding amicably from the data up. It just depends on how how you design your study. So nevertheless, these tools can help you as you move forward with your research. The other thing I just wanted to mention, because this I think is becoming a little more popular, is literature reviews are hard sometimes, and I think we underestimate how hard they are, or can be challenging for different reasons. So this is there are some options out there for literature reviews, and again, there's no substitute for the researcher reading the contents, but just to keep people organized and to keep everything together, and to really facilitate the review of the research. There are some options for that, and this is one that is actually a Lippincott product that can be purchased. So these are kind of expensive at the moment. UA does not have any type of software like this, so I will keep checking, but just wanted to bring your attention to it so you'll know that it exists. Another one is called LitAssist, and again, same kind of idea, but it helps you keep track of how you're evaluating your research, the literature, the research literature. Now, to be honest with you, I've actually done literature reviews using NVivo. So years ago, someone helped me learn how to do that, and it's the same idea. You load all of your articles in there, into the file, into that particular package that's generated for the purpose that you're working on, and you can code those articles just like you would anything else, and then that helps you again keep everything kind of organized and together. So lastly, bibliographic management software tools are very important to us, and we do have RefWorks, and we talked about this at the orientation. RefWorks is an option, but faculty have pretty much decided that EndNote is the best option for you all. So I just wanted to let you know that there are others out there, and these two are not the only one, in fact, but we have this at UA, and this has been used by many, because for years we didn't have EndNote. So you may work with someone that's more familiar with RefWorks than EndNote, but it's the same idea. The same idea is that you're able to download, collect, store the research articles that you find, and then you're able to cite while you're writing within your Word document, and then easily generate a reference list. So this, again, the idea between all of these is consistent in that regard. So here's EndNote, and this is the UA access to it. If you are a student at UAH, you'll have to go through the directions that were given to you by UAH, but you'll go through this process. I actually sent a note, I believe, to those that were UA students that could access EndNote. If you have trouble, let me know so we can get you some help and get that loaded onto your computer so you'll be able to use it, hopefully without any difficulty. So I do want to pull up the course real quick for you. and just go through the module. So module 2, you will have an overview posted here, and then you have the learning outcome, and then the overview in text, of course. Again, your reading assignments are here. You do have some articles. Some of these are related to the use of research databases. So this was a very good article. I thought that might help you designing a research question and searching the literature. There were very detailed steps about that. Again, they reference PICO and how to put that question together, how to sort of stay organized through the search itself. And again, they speak to the Boolean operators here. And then this is something that you will do also in the assignment for this module, which is create a Prisma diagram. And this is what we use to sort of help the reader determine that, or rather to visualize, excuse me, that how we got to the point in which we did with the literature we used to inform the study or to do the review. Okay, now this is typically used for, as you can see, systematic reviews and meta-analyses. You are not doing a systematic review or meta-analysis in this assignment, but I wanted you to be familiar with this and the reason why you would need to do it, and then also just to sort of help you think about transparency for the readers that you're going to be addressing at some point. So that's one example of an article. Let's see. I'm not going to go through all of these, but again, this is literature searching for practice research. And I know not all of you will be doing practice research necessarily, but this will help. This will help you in your lit search. This one is actually written by Dr. Karen Frith from UAH, related to bibliographic management software. So I'm going to let her tell you again how helpful it is. And there are a couple more. I'm going to let you all review those, but I just wanted to point them out. Back to the module spot here, pardon me. You will have a video seminar presentation that you do in Flipgrid, and then you're going to have an annotated bibliography and evidence table assignment. So these are the instructions for the assignment, and then there's also a rubric. Okay, I've tried to put examples in. We want you to produce an annotated bibliography. So here's an example of an annotated bibliography, and there's some little comment areas just to kind of show you, what is expected. In terms of the contents, then, pardon, the evidence table. This is a great article. Some of you may have already read it, but again, it's a Melnick, Feinout, Overholt, and Melnick working to communicate the hierarchy of evidence, and then this idea of putting things together in a table. So you'll set your table up just like this with the first author, if they used a framework, the design, method, sample, settings, the variables, what kind of measurement they use, did they have some kind of tool, did they have some kind of, were they collecting from a certain instrument, the data analysis that was done, findings, and then what is the relevance to you? What is the relevance to your work? So this is a very good exercise activity for anyone to do as they embark upon a new research idea, just to sort of get a glimpse into that literature. And you're able to keep that table. Some of you will have done one of these before if you went through our DMP program, But this is a good idea for just about anybody to kind of help anchor them, and they can quickly see in that table what exists. And you see tables like that that are often included in publications as well. The Prisma templates are here, and you can use those to fill that part out. And there's a little bit more information here, and there's also a rubric that you can refer to before you submit your assignment. So I hope this has been helpful. And if you have any questions related to this, please don't hesitate to contact me.